Hello my soccer universe. So much has been happening on the international World Cup qualifying stage that a video is long overdue, and despite us being back fully into the club season, although the winter break is coming, I think it is worth and a slightly longer video. I wanted to do a review of where all the qualifyings are at right after the last international break when we wrapped up the group stage of the Nations League. Never really got to it, it just got too tight schedule wise. So I'm gonna do this now. Then Friday we had the draw for the European qualifying groups. Austria got off quite well in that one. That will be a part that we'll talk about in this video. But before anything, the jerseys in the background already tell you kind of. We know the hosts not only for the next World Cup, which is a triple hosted tournament. United States with two junior partners in Canada and Mexico, but we also have triple hosts for the 2030 World Cup, namely in Spain, Morocco and Portugal, with three junior partners, Argentina, Paraguay and Uruguay, hosting a game each. And then after triple and hextuple World Cups, if you would like, in terms of hosts, Saudi Arabia is going it alone in 2034, and it was all orchestrated by Gianni Infantino to get Saudi Arabia the World Cup that they so desired, and it was done in the most controversial and honestly vomit-inducing way that I can imagine. To me, what really annoys me is, well, we knew that the Russia and Qatar bids, there was corruption going on. I mean, there was not, it's so blatant here what was happening, but everyone's agreeing to it. I mean, I give it to Gianni Infantino. He masterminded this quite well, but I really don't like the way they were going about it. I mean, first of all, we know that they still have kind of this rotation principle. This means that Saudi Arabia, who wanted to host the World Cup in 2030, had no chance because Qatar had it in 22. And there's, of course, the rivalry between Saudi Arabia and Qatar. And there was some thoughts that Saudi Arabia might host some games of the World Cup, but then Qatar went it all on their own, meaning Saudi Arabia needed to do it on their own as well. The prospect of having then a World Cup staged in America and then we go back to the Gulf region was not very appealing. It's still not appealing that with two World Cups in between we're going back to the Gulf region. I mean, this is too close together in this region. Then Gianni Infantino came up with the absolute masterstroke. At 2030 World Cup, there were quite some bids in there. We had the three nations up there, Spain, Portugal and Morocco. And I think it was a really strong bid. You know, all nations have big stadiums. Morocco wanted to have a World Cup for such a long time. Going with Spain and Portugal seemed to be a really good way of doing it. But then there was also the sentimental bid by the South American nations. I mean, the 1930 World Cup was hosted in Uruguay. Why not go back to the roots to South America? And these three nations, Argentina, Uruguay and Paraguay, wanted to host. Uruguay probably would have even hosted the final. Everyone would have loved that one. And then Saudi Arabia wanted to in on the action. And then Gianni Infantino came up with this ridiculous idea. Let's give it to the strongest bid, the one on the Iberian Peninsula plus Morocco. Then recognize that we have 100 years, we have a centenary of the World Cup. Let's have these nations also qualify and they host the first matches and they lose the spot in the rotation. And then 34 can go to Saudi Arabia. How anyone went along with that, especially from South America, I find absolutely ridiculous. I mean, it has not been stated because the way this is going, if the rotation principle stays upright, then for the 2038 World Cup, it can only be CONCACAF and Oeania bidding for that one. Would we go back to the US? I mean, CONMEBOL should be in the running for that one. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous stuff. Personally, I think this World Cup is a rather cool one. The Saudi Arabia one, this will be another Winter World Cup and we know how much trouble that caused. By the time I think enough footballs probably have collapsed that the tournament will have already been cancelled or whatever. Let's see, I hope not. I hope there will be some reason coming. And then I hope that in 2038 we can go back to CONMEBOL and maybe we can get a bid together, a strong bid. Maybe South America can sort itself out. But yeah. Let's move on. World Cup qualifying. Okay, 3 notes before we go into the standings. First off, I'm not talking about individual matches, we just look at the overall standings. Second off, I'm going through all regions except for UEFA, who just had a draw, and we'll look at the draw after this section. And CONMEBOL, because the CONMEBOL groups so far, the only ones where there's no direct qualification spot. When I do the next update, I will include CONMEBOL as well, but this would have just been too much work and time is of the essence. And thirdly, and we're already going into it, at times it is not so interesting of who is already qualified, who is about to qualify, but to look at the teams that are actually on the outside looking in will might not qualify. Very often these are the more interesting parts. And if we start in South America, CONMEBOL, I mean, Brazil will qualify, but their qualifying campaign has been characterized by their poor performances. Also, Argentina having had a strong start, but other than that, it's kind of middling, but they're still ahead of the pack. 3 points ahead of Ecuador. Then Uruguay, they had a little blip in there. Now they are resurgent again. In Colombia, who were really strong for quite a while. Last 2 dates did not go their way, but I think those 4 will easily qualify, as will Brazil, although they have been rather turgid to watch. Bolivia sits now on the playoff spot, intercontinental playoff, whereas Venezuela for a while actually looked like they might sneak into the direct qualification spots. They got some credible results at home, but the draws, that's what's hurting them. And Chile and Peru, not looking good. Let's run also through the African groups. And what I like about this one is that, there's literally every African country that is allowed to enter is already entering in here. So I think this is pretty cool. So we see a lot of African teams. And the qualification mode here is that the top spot qualifies and the next one then goes into a playoff, but it's only the 4 best second place teams. So this is a really, really tough one to get. And then I think one goes in the intercontinental playoff as well. So a really tough qualifying path. If you don't finish top spot, Egypt is far and away the best team of their group and will most easily qualify. In Group B, you would think Senegal, and so having Sudan, a war-torn country, riding so high is a little bit of a fairy tale story. Senegal, still the favorites, and there's still plenty to go. But at the moment, they only sit in second, and the DRC is a team that was on the verge of qualifying a few times. They might not make it. Even worse than Senegal, way worse, is Nigeria. After 4 games, they have only 3 points. That's really, really low. They sit behind Rwanda, South Africa, Benin, and Lesotho. Crazy stuff. Zimbabwe also in there. But you already see in the standings that it is also relatively wide open. So if they get a few wins, I think that Nigeria will qualify from that one as well. But at the moment, it will be South Africa that is favored to qualify from that one. Cameroon might have struggled in previous campaigns. This time around, they seem like the awesome favorite to get out of their group. Libya, Cape Verde are the closest challengers, maybe Angola in there as well. But for now, Cameroon do look good, as do Morocco. Clearly the class of their group. I think the other teams in there are not of the level of Morocco. Also crucial, Eritrea withdrew from qualifying, so this is the only 5-team group and it's not yet clear how they will now count for the second place teams. I personally would assume that they will just eliminate the last place team from each group like they've done in UEFA and then make a comparison, but that has not been confirmed yet. In Group F, after winning the AFCON, Cote d'Ivoire of course riding high as well, but Gabon also keeping up there, so this might be a tight one. Don't underestimate Burundi, Kenya or the Gambia as well. We have 3 more groups to go. Algeria and Mozambique lead the group, but you would think that Algeria go through. Then we have Tunisia ahead of Namibia. I also would expect Tunisia to go through there. And then another team that's on the bubble in Ghana. Big name that has not qualified for AFCON and now also very much struggling. And there's also Mali, a team that was also always threatening to qualify, but again, a war-torn country. Maybe this is playing in there. Things are a little bit clearer in Asia. We have already 3 teams more or less qualified. This is Iran from Group A, South Korea from Group B, and Japan from Group C. Especially Japan completely dominating. They are virtually qualified. I think they need only 1 more point. So I think this is what's gonna happen. To me, the most outstanding thing is that how bad has Saudi Arabia been. That's why Mancini has been relieved of his duties, but also Qatar not really living up to their expectations, only sitting in 4th at the moment. Uzbekistan being a little bit better there. In Group B, we have Iraq, Jordan, Oman, relatively tight together everything. The format is as follows. The top 2 qualify directly for the World Cup. Then there will be the next 2 teams, they will be thrown together, and then there will be 2 groups of 3 where the top team again qualifies, and then the second place teams have a playoff, and it goes to the intercontinental playoff as well. So also rather complicated, but at least we know that Japan will probably be the first team to qualify for the World Cup. And We also have a direct qualification spot for the OFC, and New Zealand, of course, is still in the running. They had the group games, and you see how New Zealand romped through that competition. There was an average of 4.25 goals scored in OFC qualifying so far in the group stage. But now the semifinals are there. We have New Caledonia facing Tahiti, and New Zealand against Fiji in a tournament is, of course, hosted in New Zealand. So New Zealand more or less on track for the World Cup as well. They will also qualify early next year, I would think. And that leaves us now with the draw for the European qualifiers. And already the pot composition had major trouble in there because of the Nations League and so on. But in the end, it actually worked out that you could take the FIFA ranking and assign the pots accordingly, meaning that Austria actually was in pot 1, which was hugely advantageous for Austria, and it panned out overall quite well for them. But also meant that for the draw procedure itself, you basically needed a PhD in FIFA qualifying because there were placeholders, because, you know, the teams that play in the quarterfinals of the Nations League A, the winners have to play the final four, so the winners have to go for sure into the 4-team groups. The losers then could also go in 5-team groups. So kind of a weird system there already. Then we have in March teams that play in the playoffs between the leagues A, B and C, D and so on. And that meant that there could only be one playoff team in each group. And so unless it's a 4-team group. And so it got relatively complicated. Add to it that, for instance, Ukraine couldn't play Belarus or Serbia couldn't play Kosovo because of ongoing conflicts. Same goes for Armenia and Azerbaijan and Spain and Gibraltar. Then there was some cold weather restrictions because you don't want to have lots of teams from a cold weather region and then games have to be postponed. And lastly, we also had travel restrictions there. So a whole lot of restrictions. In the end, I think it all worked out. We only had to keep track of the Nations League restrictions. I think the other ones, except for one, did not come into play. And they tried to communicate it, but I don't think it was that well done. I don't know why they dragged this for an entire hour. Do we need to introduce every team with a little montage? Can we just say, these are the teams, we draw them, blah, blah, blah. In half an hour, you can be done with the whole darn thing, I would argue. Also, the facts that they were spat out at us. In any case, before we look at the groups, we have 6 4-team groups, we have 6 5-team groups. I'm actually quite happy to have 4-team groups. It means qualifying is rather condensed. Nations League is good, but much less games that actually count, which I think is good for many of the nations in there. Also for 5-team groups, the same thing. You have 2 extra slots where you can play playoffs, so you have a day off and you can organize potentially some friendlies. So I think UEFA have done good there. So from each group, top qualifies directly for a World Cup. Second place goes into the playoff that will be then augmented with 2 group winners from the Nations League to keep it simple. And again, there will then be, I think, 3 paths formed for the last 3 spots from UEFA. Let's jump into the groups directly. Group A, winner Germany, Italy, Slovakia, Northern Ireland, Luxembourg. Will be hard to see anyone but the winner between Germany and Italy qualifying from there. If it's Italy, Slovakia, Northern Ireland will be bogey teams. If it's Germany, easy group for Germany. Group B, I think, is a really interesting one, a rather even one. Switzerland, Sweden, Slovenia and Kosovo. My Kosovo definitely outsider there, but I would think Sweden will like their chances going through. Sweden also has a star there, a group winner. Group C, the loser between Portugal and Denmark, then Greece, Scotland and Belarus. 3-way race potentially, especially if Denmark goes in there, because Denmark have been faltering, Greece have been rising and Scotland have been a tough team. Scotland will not be happy with the draw. I think that probably Greece would hope that Denmark go through, and I think they will see a chance. Group D, the winner between France and Croatia, so I would say book France there, Ukraine, Iceland, Azerbaijan. Either way, even if Ukraine is in there, I would say the winner of huge favorites. Same thing goes for Group E, although this is one of the dicey ones and I think a rather even one. The winner, Spain, Netherlands, will be huge favorite over Turkey, Georgia and Bulgaria. And I would say Turkey probably have a prayer against the Netherlands, against Spain. I don't see any of these troubling the Spanish, although Turkey probably has the potential too. I actually like Turkey, Bulgaria, neighboring duel, Georgia also not too far away, all Black Sea nations, so there's some geographically interest there. The win of Portugal, Denmark will like also their chances. Hungary is probably the steepest challenger. Ireland have been faltering as of late, and Armenia also not that great. So that's it with the 4-team groups. Let's look at the 5-team groups. Again, with placeholders. I will argue the Netherlands will play against Poland, Finland, Lithuania and Malta. Not a bad draw. Poland, the Netherlands will beat Poland, Finland, rather easy. Austria, I mean, I don't want to say a peach of a draw because you have to beat Romania. And Romania is probably the steepest challenger there, but Bosnia is a team that has been on constant decline and Edin Dzeko will not be able to bail them out time after time. Cyprus is a team that you have to beat, and San Marino have been probably one of the best stories of 24, but you have to beat San Marino 2 times. If Austria does not win this group, then you don't deserve being at the World Cup. And yes, Romania will be a steep challenge, but I like Austria's chances there, that's for sure. Then the loser between Germany and Italy. I would say Italy against Norway, Israel, Estonia and Moldova. Norway probably will hope for Italy because I think Norway can get at Italy, but Italy for once should qualify, I would argue. Then, interesting one, Belgium, Wales, there is previous. And then North Macedonia, Kazakhstan and Liechtenstein is between Belgium and Wales. Wales have been surprisingly solid as of late. Then another one group that I don't understand how this happened. I mean, England will qualify. Let's get this out of the way. England want to win the whole darn thing. Serbia and Albania. How is it possible that those two can face each other again? I mean, there was so much previous trouble. There's trouble pre-programmed. I'm absolutely certain this should be a forbidden matchup, I would say, but it will cause headlines, that's for sure. However, England cruising through that group for sure. And then I assume Croatia, could be France, Czechia, those two will be evenly matched, although I would give Croatia still the edge, then Montenegro, the Faroe Islands and Gibraltar. So yeah, those are the groups. I think it's an interesting draw. I mean, most interesting for me was, of course, the Austria draw. With the placeholders, a little bit hard to tell, so I like to look at the complete groups. The Belgium-Wales groups looks open, I would say. The England, Serbia, Albania, as I said, for political reasons, really interesting. I think Group B, Switzerland, Sweden, Slovenia, that sounds quite interesting as well. So yeah, again, longish video, but you know, there was a lot to talk about. Please let me know your thoughts on everything FIFA and FIFA World Cup related. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe to my channel if you want to see more videos like these. I'll talk to you in the next year about FIFA qualifying, and I will talk to you soon about more things in my soccer universe. Bye. Hey there, I really hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, here are some videos and playlists that you may enjoy too. Also, please consider subscribing to my channel and hit the little bell icon so you get notified whenever something happens in my soccer universe. And with that, have a wonderful day. Bye!